You want it, I want it, they want it, fanfiction Randy wants it, even Miss Molly wants it. Absolutely everyone wants it. So let's talk about it. Hey everyone, it's Charles. How are you today? Ash Ketchum is finally retiring from his 25-year run as the Pokemon anime's lead man, and it is high time that he starred in his own video game. Of course, the haters will shout the idea down, but Ash is basically just red, so Ash can't be in the games because they're the same person. No, Randy. No, they are not. Ash and Red may have grown out of the same source material, that is, a vacuous 8-bit player avatar in a Game Boy game from 1996, but much like the Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood anime adaptations, they quickly grew in two entirely different directions to each become their own thing. Red, the quiet, respectable bad man of the video games, / the bombastic hero of the adventures manga, and Ash Ketchum, the sass man from Pallet Town who traveled far and wide to eventually stake a name for himself as the world's #1 trainer. At this point in time, the two characters have pretty much evolved into the Coke and Pepsi, the turtle and the tortoise, the cupcake and the muffin, the Brittany and the Christina of the Pokemon universe. Or something like that. The point is, they are two or more different characters. And Ash Ketchum deserves a more solid presence in the gameverse as much as Red. Actually, Ash already has snuck his way into various Pokemon video games, at least in a minor capacity, either directly or by implication. For instance, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon featured an Easter egg photo of Ash and Pikachu in the abandoned Thrifty Megamart that could be viewed during Acerola's trial on Ula Ula Island. Sun and Moon indirectly referenced him via Ash Greninja, a mysterious letter, and Ash Cap Pikachu distribution events. Sword and Shield's Isle of Armor expansion gifted the player alternate universe Ash Ketchum's Pokemon Coco hat by way of a researcher who says it's the cap of a boy who meets a lot of Pokemon during his journey. I thought it'd look nice on you. Pokemon Go has referenced Ash directly or indirectly on multiple occasions. Detective Pikachu brought in a Pikachu implied to be Ash's Pikachu, who Detective Pikachu ends his conversation with by saying, "Yeah, so I guess you two will make your dream come true. Tell your buddy to be the very best like no one ever was." Moving forward, the Japanese arcade games Pokemon Mezastar, Gaole, and Treta have all featured Ash either within the game or on the game tiles inserted into the machines. Moving on, we also have various shovelware PC games in which Ashy Boy appears, and, of course, Pokemon Puzzle League, the game Japan never got, which skinned the classic Panel de Pon formula with a touch of Indigo League magic and a Ketchum quest to win a competition in Puzzle Village. A handful of fan games about Ash's earlier adventures have trickled out over the years as well, but I won't mention any of them by name in case the Nintendo ninjas decide to come down the chimney and put me in a body bag. And of course, as the most substantial of Ash Ketchum's video game cameos to date, Pokemon Master EX's The Classic Thunderbolt, Let's Have a Battle, Blazing Battle with Ash, and Challenge from Ash events, the A Day with Ash sync pair story, etc., etc., finally brought Ash into the game universe in a meaningful, if still pretty limited way. In the most notable of these events, The Classic Thunderbolt, Ash arrives in Paseo while training for the Masters 8 tournament and ends up helping Tina and her Flareon overcome their differences in a charming 15 minutes or so long story. Also, in the Blazing Battle with Ash event, Red himself arrives in the stadium to watch Ash's finals match in the Single Master Challenge Cup, and seeing Ash emerge victorious in the tournament, he expresses interest in facing him one day. And it was great to see these two very different characters indirectly interacting in the same plane of virtual reality at long last. Masters EX is certainly the juiciest of juicy Ash Ketchum gameverse nuggets that we have been treated to thus far, but the concept of an entire video game dedicated to Pallet Town player #1 gushes more juice than a bag of gushers. So with those fun trivia nuggets in the box, let's proceed to the full game pitch. First, you might be asking, why bother with a dedicated Ash Ketchum video game adventure when his adventures have mostly been retreads of the core story beats of the main series games to begin with? To which I'll give you a handful of answers before we start fleshing out the concept. 1. Ash is a beloved multi-generational character. 2. He has been the human face of Pokemon that fans have rallied around since 1997. 3. Ash actually has a personality and a voice, quite unlike the main series video game player characters. 4. His story has often been at its most interesting when it's deviated from the video games. And 5. Now that Ash has retired as the protagonist of the anime, this is simply a great opportunity to keep his character relevant and to cash in on his brand in a new way. With that said, let's lay out the critical criteria and build out a blueprint. My criteria for an Ash Ketchum-centered video game are as follows. First, it needs to leverage the unique strengths of Ash and the anime. Second, it can't simply be a repackaged main series game or a regional compilation starring Ash. And 3, it can't suck. Because, let's not beat around the Bulbasaur, playing most manga/anime to game adaptations is about as much fun as waking up at 5 AM to spend the morning milking horse tatties. Of course, there have been some gems in the rough like Astro Boy Omega Factor, Attack on Titan 2, Dragon Ball Fighters, or .hack GU Last Recode. But for every Yu-Gi-Oh! The Eternal Duelist Soul or Jump Superstars, there are 10 other butt dribbles along the lines of that other Astro Boy game, Yu Yu Hakusho Spirit Detective, Dragon Ball Evolution, One Piece Pirates Carnival, or any of the monkey doo-doo in the discount bin at Book Off. Such is the reality of licensed adaptations. At this point, some might think that turning an Ash Ketchum adventure into a Pokemon video game should be easy peasy lemon squeezy because, after all, the Pokemon anime was adapted from a beloved set of video games to begin with. So all we have to do is reverse engineer Ash's anime adventures back into the video game format and we should be good to go. Except that then we'd more or less end up back at the main series video games themselves, perhaps regrafted with a handful of fresh story beats and characters, but Galar Done Dirty Saga aside, very, very close in terms of the overarching structure and progression. This type of adaptation would not adhere to criteria number 1 and number 2, rendering it little more than a pointless rehash caught somewhere between the games and the anime. Instead, the game needs to stand on the merits of its own original story that actually leverages specific strengths of Ash and Yellow Mickey's brand, and while it can integrate core game series mechanics, it ought to differentiate itself in some way with a fresh, Ketchum-like spin on the gameplay. If it doesn't do these two things, then there is no point even making it, at least in my opinion. So let's bust out the original story and gameplay concepts for Ash Ketchum's very unique and very exciting Pokemon video game. As much as it was pretty fun to retread the core Dragon Ball Z manga/anime story beats in the Legacy of Goku 1, 2, and Boo's Fury, we really don't need a straightforward Ash Ketchum story beat retread, considering that, as we've discussed, for the most part, Ash's adventures are already retreads of the main series games. As such, we'll want a game that does leverage Ash Ketchum's legacy for the fans, but built into a brand-cracking new story framework within which our hero has space to blaze a new trail. For a bit of inspiration, we've actually seen Ash's adventure split away from the main series video games quite significantly at various points in the show's history, and these segments are among the most memorable sagas of Pokemon's anime universe. For instance, the Orange Island saga was original anime-only material that charmed fans with a post-Indigo League, pre-Johto League redemption arc for Ash between the main series games. The Pokemon Journeys saga bucked the game structure entirely to take us on an unpredictable ride that saw regions collide. And the Pokemon movies have pretty much always done their own thing, giving us a handful of truly memorable stories and truly memorable stinkers that have seen Ash and Pikachu step beyond the shadows cast by the video games. On the note of movies, The Power of Us has a particularly distinctive feel, and, in my estimation, presents a good model upon which to base a dedicated Ash Ketchum video game. It unfolds in a novel setting completely divorced from the games and the anime series. That setting feels much fuller and more cohesive than most locations in the Pokemon universe. The cast of characters is the most varied and interesting of the movies, if you ask me. The narrative easily stands on its own merits without relying on legendary this or world-ending that gimmicks. And with a few tweaks, the scope would be just right for a 20-odd hour spin-off game. In fact, back when I first watched that movie, I couldn't help but wish there was a game set in such a fantastic, fleshed out, and self-contained location. And I think you could layer a focused quest to be the very best on top of that sort of lively setting to create a really special video game chapter in the journey of Ash Ketchum. So working with that as a bit of inspiration, here's a premise. Following a big victory in the Masters 8 tournament, Ash Ketchum receives an invite to the 5 Crystal Cup, a prestigious tournament set to unfold on Summit Spire Island across the ocean on the other side of the world. And with that, Champion Ash and his Pikachu embark on an overseas voyage to expand the definition of what it means to be a Pokemon Master. On the boat ride there, Ash encounters a secretive girl heading for Summit Spire Island with a mission shrouded in mystery. Shortly after his arrival at Brinkbell City Port, Ash learns that invitees intending to participate in the 5 Crystal Cup elimination tournament kicking off in just 30 days teammates must first qualify by completing a series of trials testing not only their battle skills, but also their minds, their hearts, their souls, and their bonds with Pokemon. Of course, Ash decides to put everything he has learned over the years to the test, to complete the trials, make it through the elimination tournament, and win it all. But along the way, he finds himself tangled up in a mystery regarding the true nature of the island that erupts into a situation beyond anyone's imagination. And one of the most important quests in all of his journeys is set in motion. Well, that is a skeleton for a narrative structured to accommodate a tournament arc, a mystery arc, and hours of fun, exploration, and side quests in a rich setting. The brand new story framework gives Ash Ketchum the opportunity to grow instead of simply stagnate in the recreation of a past adventure, and with this framework in place, we can now weave Ash Ketchum flavor, lore, and classic memories into the mix by 1. Unleashing Ash's silly personality, strength of character, and breadth of experiences through the dialogue and animation, 2. Showcasing interactions with classic characters inside and outside of the tournament arc, 3. Giving Ash access to his full roster of Pokemon via a box linked to Oak's lab, 4. Incorporating playable flashbacks of key scenes from Ash's adventure that are relevant to the plot, and 5. Bringing Ash and friends to life with full voice acting, as voice acting is long overdue in the world of Pokemon video games, and an Ash Ketchum game is the perfect testing ground to get the show moving. The key is that the game's unique story is prioritized, then enhanced by Ash's presence, personality, and wealth of experiences, rather than just having the whole thing immediately devolve into a shallow fan service buffet like most anime video games. Anyways, with the game's story concept in mind, let's break down the gameplay. Gameplay-wise, Ash Ketchum's video game adventure would capitalize on the battle and game mechanics of the core series, but make a fresh departure from series norms in terms of how those mechanics are actually executed. After all, we don't really need the main series plus a billion spin-offs and remakes, all showcasing the same style of gameplay. Or do we? And when I think of what would capture the core spirit of Ash Ketchum from a gameplay perspective, I think of his own wild man antics, as well as his high-octane, high-speed Pokemon battles. So it would be key to capture these two elements in the gameplay. Primarily, this would be achieved in 2 ways. Firstly, the game would give Ash himself a significant degree of mobility, as he is a human wrecking ball / professional monkey in the show. His physicality actually impacts the story and the types of challenges he works through, and the movement of the player-trainer is something that the main series video games have never prioritized, making it a point of differentiation. Legends Arceus did give players greater freedom of movement, and people loved the dodge-heavy action, so it would be even more fun to see Ash in motion with Link-level dexterity, or even the Hobbit-level dexterity. Secondly, Pokemon battles would be reinvented as intense bouts factoring in the perspectives of the Pokemon rather than those of just the trainers selecting commands from a menu. One option would be to run the battles in a fighting game format similar to that of Pokémon Tournament, as this would replicate the furious pace of Ash's anime battles in the games in a way that turn-based battles cannot. A second option would be to reach further back into the Pokemon video game catalog to model the battle gameplay after that of the Pokepark games. Back when those underrated gems hit the market, they made me wonder why the main series had never experimented with such a fun real-time battle system. And the beauty of the Pokepark battle format is that it is aligned with the exploration format, meaning that we could take control of Ash's Pokemon outside of battle to perform platforming tasks, participate in races, chases, etc. to capture even more of the elements that have made Ash's anime adventures unique over the years. As such, I think that this is the superior option, but regardless of whether the battle format was modeled after Pokken, Pokepark, or a hybrid of the two, the developers could also incorporate Super Smash Bros. Style switching, perhaps with a radial menu similar to that in The Witcher, to keep the battles fast, frenetic, and strategic. Of course, action RPG elements, leveling, and moveset tinkering would be the icing on the cake. Ash's enhanced movement capabilities combined with fast-paced, real-time battle mechanics would make the gameplay of Ash's video game adventure quite distinct from the main series games, as well as from Legends Arceus and any of the major spin-offs like Colosseum or XD Gale of Darkness. It would very much be a This is Ash Ketchum brand of gameplay. As some additional notes related to the structure encasing the core gameplay loops, the game's battles would actually be challenging enough to force smart team composition instead of the one Pokemon to steamroll them all gameplay of the main series games. In Ash's final full-fledged anime series, and in the capstone miniseries aimed to be a Pokemon Master, it was emphasized that Ash's journey to Pokemon Mastery involves more than simply battling his way to the top of the world, and thus the trials are designed to test the participants in a more comprehensive manner. As such, the trials to qualify for the 5 Crystal Cup would comprise a variety of tasks, ranging from standard battles to battles using preset teams, to obstacle course runs, to raising Pokemon, to completing a Bomber's Journal style quest book, to etc. etc. In terms of exploration, outside of the trials, Ash would work towards solving the island's big mystery by exploring the city and countryside, kind of like Shenmue without the crappy controls and tedious drawer searching. And in his efforts to assemble a dream team for the tournament, he could draw from not just his classic roster, but also from 200 plus species of catchable Pokemon living on the island, including, of course, Dunsparce. Furthermore, as Ash interacts with both new characters and classic characters who have turned up to watch the trials and the elimination tournament, various side quests and mini arcs would crop up that reference the action, the lore, and the memorable escapades of the show. On that note, as an ode to longtime fans of the anime, Ash would periodically enter story-triggered flashbacks, presented as memories and dreams of his past adventures. These segments would be playable and directly relevant to driving the plot forward on Summit Spire Island, and as somewhat of a rough comparison, they'd be functionally similar to the memories in To the Moon, which is, by the way, a good game. The flashbacks will be a great opportunity to bring existing voice samples into the game, accompanied by brand new voice work as Ash reflects on his experiences. For example, when training an unruly Charcadet up for a trial mission, he would tap into his memories of the tough times he experienced training his Charizard. And among other scenes, we would revisit the famous scene on the beach in the Orange Islands, and not only fangirl at the great memories, but apply those learnings to the present situation. The idea is to draw on Ash's past, to pay respects to his legacy, and to do it in a way that feels natural and supports the plot, as opposed to simply rolling out a superficial fan service festival. So if you can get me in touch with the genie to make it happen, let me know. And that brings us to the end of our Ash Ketchum video game concept. Aside from a few brief detours, the Pokemon video games have always lacked a colorful main character, instead opting for a vacuous avatar upon which players have imprinted themselves. That isn't a bad thing, and yet taking the personality-packed Ash Ketchum out of anime retirement to head up a rich, original story with fresh and exciting gameplay seems like a whole lot of fun to me. After all, he is a very fun, wholesome character, and I would simply love to play as an iconic, fully voiced Pokemon character who actually interacts with other characters, makes me laugh, inspires me, and proactively moves the story forward, instead of just standing around staring at people in every conversation. But how about you? What do you think about this Ash Ketchum video game concept? What are your ideas for a game starring Pallet Town player number 1? And what other Pokemon video game spin-offs do you hope to see in the coming years? I'm curious what you think, and as always, let's chat.